In this video, we're gonna look at progressions for learning how to safely and comfortably bail out of a handstand using the cartwheel method. The idea is that once I'm in a handstand and start falling towards my backside, and I've fallen so much that I'm not gonna be able to save it, then I can basically turn my fall into a cartwheel and land safely on my feet. So it might look something like this. From my handstand, I start to lose balance, and I simply take a step forward and twist out. So the idea is simple, but that doesn't make it easy. The main challenge for a lot of adults is also that it is, or it can be, very scary to fall towards the overbalanced side, because you could crash on your back or straight on your face, and that wouldn't be such a nice experience. So what we need to do is find a way to gradually build up the difficulty so we can stay at a level where we are somewhat comfortable. It's alright if it's challenging, but somewhat comfortable working on actually falling out of the handstand. And for this, we can use the wall, and we can really start from like ground zero. So starting from the very bottom, the first thing to build up to be able to doing is just get up against the wall. You don't have to come very close in the beginning, that's fine. And the first idea would just be to lift one leg away from the wall and slide it out towards the side, and then come back. And it's fine to just do one side and just building the confidence to do this. If that feels alright, you can try it, coming a bit closer to the wall and doing the same thing. Ideally, we want the hips to be placed right over the hands like I'm doing in the previous video. So keeping a straight line from the hands and all the way up to the hips, but allowing the legs to be at a diagonal in towards the wall. If you're not comfortable being in that position in the beginning, that's completely fine. Just know that that's the position that we're working towards doing it from. Next step is taking a step with the hand. So I can set up in the same position. Oopsie, don't have to get too close to the wall, but I can if I want a slightly bigger challenge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a slight step forward with the hand and small step backwards. Doesn't have to be a huge step, as long as you're just able to move the hand slightly, it's all good. When I'm taking the step with the hand, I'm moving my hips in the opposite direction than the hand that I would want to move. Next up is trying to combine the leg movement with the stepping of the hands. So getting up into position, I'm gonna take a step out and let the leg come out and then come back. So hand step, out with the leg and come back. Hand step, out with the leg and come back. To turn this into a fall or into a bailing method, all we need to do is basically allow the leg to swing all the way down towards the floor. So in the beginning, we're going to turn it kind of into a sideways cartwheel. So we're going to be almost parallel with the wall. So it's going to look something like this. And it's fine to keep a bit more distance to the wall when we're first trying this one out. That will probably feel a bit more comfortable. So I'm going to take a step with the hand, leg out to the side, and just let it come all the way down to the floor. And don't worry if it's looking a bit clumsy in the beginning. The important thing is that you're landing on your feet, because that's basically all you need to save yourself. Looking pretty is not so important for this right now. I'm also, as I am falling down towards the floor, I am pushing this arm strongly into the floor to kind of push myself further out into the cartwheel. When you are at this step, there are two main ways that we want to slowly make this harder. So small incremental improvements, you could say. So one of them is being able to not just bail from this distance to the wall, but working on being able to do the same thing, but standing closer to the wall. This can be done very incrementally, slowly going closer and closer towards the wall, but the idea is the same. Step down the leg and push away. It can also be helpful to think about trying to open up the angle that you're falling in. So trying to, in the beginning, it's fine to just fall parallel to the wall, but a nice and useful challenge is to see if over time you can work on falling just slightly more away from the wall. Eventually you'll want to be able to fall almost perpendicular to the wall, so almost straight away from the wall. Doesn't have to be perfect, but getting close to falling in that direction. Once the previous steps are starting to feel somewhat solid and somewhat comfortable, we want to keep challenging this by making it seem a bit more like a fall. So we're going to introduce just a slight pinch of unpredictability and a slight bit of slightly less control, you could say. Because of course when we're actually doing a handstand, we're not completely in control over when we're actually going to fall, so we just have to be ready to react. And the way we start introducing this is just reversing the order that we do the movement in. So instead of starting by taking a step, I'm going to start by pulling my leg away from the wall and then taking a step and initiating my fall. And this simple progression can be progressed quite a bit. And the way that I make this harder is just that I start to be a bit more aggressive with how far away from the wall I pull the leg. It can both be in terms of speed, but I could also move the leg so far away from the wall that I'm actually starting to fall before I move the hand. But again, you can approach this incrementally, just starting by removing the leg, lifting it away from the wall. But you can start out doing it while you're still completely in control and you choose when you move the hand and start the fall. But slowly challenging how far can I actually go into the fall before I go with the movement. And like I said, second way we challenge this way of working it is also eventually lifting the leg away from the wall more aggressively, just adding a bit more tempo, because that's gonna force you to be able to react a little bit faster to these kinds of movements. When this last step is starting to feel somewhat comfortable, you're starting to get some nice control there, it can be a good time to start taking some of your attempts to an open space. In the beginning, a nice way to approach is just think that I'm going to be kicking up into a handstand, but I'm already thinking that I'm just going to be kicking up and then bailing out as soon as I get up. So just doing it on purpose and getting comfortable doing that. Again, doesn't have to be pretty, just have to be enough to not fall down towards your backside. Eventually you might be able to do it with a bit more control, actually getting all the way up into a handstand. And when that is starting to be comfortable, you're also pretty much usually comfortable bailing out of a handstand. To end off this tutorial, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the mental aspect and working with the fear when it comes to bailing out of the handstands. I like to use a tool called red, yellow and green zones, which is kind of your comfort zone. So green zone is where it's really easy, not scary at all, not really challenging either. Yellow zone is when things are starting to get, somewhat challenging, possibly also slightly scary. And red zone is, where you're like, fuck, shit, I'm gonna fall on my face and die. Panic mode, right? When it's really, really scary. And we want to aim towards spending as much time as possible in the yellow zone. Pushing too far into the red zone can actually make fears worse. And kind of like reinforce this idea that it's super scary to do this. But if we always stay in the green zone, we're not really like pushing the boundaries, we're not really actually getting any better, any more comfortable. But this idea of staying in the yellow zone where it's somewhat challenging also means that you might have to adjust the exercise or the level you're working on depending on your mental state on the day. So surprise, surprise, your journey towards getting comfortable bailing out of the handstand is not going to be as linear as I laid out here, and just like going from one step to the next. You're going to be going a bit back and forth, because if you have a lot of mental energy and calmness in the head, there's a good chance that you'll be able to work on something that's just a bit harder than usual, but without being as scared. Whereas if you're stressed out or other things that are affecting your mental state, it is very possible that you'll need to step down a bit. And that can happen day to day, and it can also happen within a session. All right? So it's completely fine, and it's encouraged to go a bit back and forth. It can be nice to start with something that is do a few reps of one of the exercises that feels kind of easy and comfortable, and then kind of step up from there until you reach the point where it's like, okay, this is actually adequately challenging, and then staying there.